How would you double your class if we offered you $1 million to get it done? Turn to the person next to you and talk about that for a minute. All right, let me give you my 5-step strategy for doubling a class every 2 years left. My 5-step strategy spells out the word tiger, and it goes like this. The first thing we want to do is teach a halfway decent lesson each and every week. Nothing less will do. And it is one of our big 5, so let me get you to say this with me just to cement this in your mind. Say it good and loud with me, will you? Teach a halfway decent lesson each and every week. Nothing less will do. Now, I've had people disagree with me. I was down in Austin, Texas, in San Antonio, Texas one time, and doing this seminar, and I got to this point, and a lady just stood up, couldn't help herself, just stood up at the back of the hall, and she said, "Hang on here. I disagree with you, Josh. We don't need halfway decent teaching. We need incredible teaching. We need excellent teaching. We need the best teaching we can get." I don't think you have to be Chuck Swindoll to get this stuff done. I don't think you have to be Beth Moore to double a Sunday school class. I don't think you have to be Zeke Zieler to get this stuff done. Now, if you are Chuck Swindoll, life starts to get easy for you. You know, if you're Beth Moore, it's fairly easy to double a Sunday school class. I don't know if you know the story of Chuck Swindoll, but he was a pastor out in California, moved to Dallas to become the president of Dallas Theological Seminary. After a while, he got an itch to get back to preaching and get back to pastoring. And so he decided, you know, got the word out. A little small group came up, showed up on a Wednesday night. 200 people showed up. You know, if you're Chuck Swindoll, you can do that kind of thing. The next Sunday, they doubled in 1 week. They went from 200 to 400 in 1 week. And if you're Chuck Swindoll, you can do that kind of thing. Next week, doubled again, 800 the very next week. And you can do that if you're Chuck Swindoll, but the truth is God did not give us very many Chuck Swindolls. Now, maybe I'm missing how some people imply or what they hear when I say this. I'm not saying to drop the level down to halfway decent. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying it's got to be at least halfway decent. And I want to lend confidence to you. If you look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm just not a Beth Moore kind of gal. I'm not a Chuck Swindoll kind of guy, and I can't give this polished, eloquent presentation. I'm just kind of a normal old person. I want to lend confidence to you and say to you, God can use you to turn the world upside down. It's what amazed the world about the early church, that the Bible says that God has taken the mystery of the gospel and poured it into common, ordinary, earthen vessels. Jars of clay, another translation has it. Howard Hendricks paraphrased it by saying, God has taken the mystery of the gospel and poured it into common, ordinary peanut butter jars. It's what amazed the world about the explosive church, the early church, that they saw this explosive, expanding growth, rapid growth of the early church. And they were expecting to see some really sharp cookies at the top of that leadership pyramid. And they saw Peter and James and John. And these guys were just normal old Joes. They're just normal old kind of people who had dirt underneath their fingernails and so on. And they said, how could this happen? And it's God's design, it's God's pleasure to use ordinary people to get the world upside down, turn the world upside down. But I want to tell you, as somebody in Oklahoma said it to me one time, good visitation will not overcome bad teaching. And you got to have at least halfway, it doesn't have to be incredible, but it's got to be at least halfway decent teaching each and every week. Nothing less will do. And to illustrate this point, there's really kind of two sides of the point. If you're picking up on that, it's got to be halfway decent, but it doesn't have to be incredible. And to illustrate kind of both of those, I like to ask this question. Who is the #1 provider of hamburgers worldwide? 1, 2, 3? McDonald's, right? All right, very good. On a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to rate McDonald's best hamburger, all right? Now, let me ask you to set down your pen and paper for just a second. We're going to do this with our fingers. In just a moment, if you would rate McDonald's best hamburger on a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to hold up 10 fingers like this, all right? Everybody understand what you would do? You don't have to do it just yet. That's if you thought they was a really great, fine hamburger. Their best hamburger was really fine. I want you to hold up 10 fingers in a moment. If you think their best hamburger is pretty much a crummy hamburger, I want you to hold up a 1. Now, there is no 0 in this scale. Sometimes people want to hold up zeros, but there is no 0 in this scale. So the scale is between 1 and 10, all right? Everybody know how you're going to vote? You set down your pen, all right? So you can vote. Ready? 1, 2, 3, vote. All right, now look around the room. I see some 5s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 4s, 7s, 3s, etc. Now, would you agree with me, based on our little informal market research, that a McDonald's hamburger is no better than halfway decent? You agree with that? Now, I did have 2 people a few weeks ago in Missouri, when I got to this, they both raised their hands like this. 2 10s, just like this. I thought, that's kind of strange. I turned to my host and I said, what's up with that? He said, they own a McDonald's. so they have a little bit of bias in their evaluation right there. But notwithstanding their biased evaluation, I think most of us would agree that a McDonald's hamburger is no better than halfway decent. You agree with that? All right, now I'm kind of a small group leader at heart here, so help me out here. How did they do that? How did they become the #1 provider of hamburgers worldwide with hamburgers that are not any better than that? They're not any better than halfway decent. Talk to me. How did they do it? Advertising. Good. What else? All right. Consistency. A Big Mac in Texas is just as bad as a Big Mac in New Mexico, but at least I know what I'm getting, right? Children, some of you said. What else did you say? They're everywhere. In fact, Ray Kroc said one time, I'm not in the hamburger business, I'm the real estate business. The #1 owner of real estate in America is McDonald's. And you put all these things together, and I kind of eat, breathe, drink, sleep Sunday school, and everything in life in a way is kind of a picture of Sunday school to me. And this is a picture of Sunday school to me in this regard, that we take a halfway decent hamburger and we surround it with Happy Meals and French fries and consistency and clean restroom sometimes comes up, and the right location and the right land and so on, and we can become the #1 provider of hamburgers worldwide. And in a similar way, we can double a class every 2 years or less by doing these 5 things. If we have halfway decent teaching each and every week, nothing less will do. You don't got to be Chuck Swindoll. You don't got to be Zig Ziglar. You don't have to be Beth Moore to pull this thing off. But it does have to be halfway decent. Now, can I take off the gloves? Tell you something that your pastor's too sweet to tell you? In some cases, I'm not saying all the cases, but in a scary minority of the cases, our teaching is nowhere close to halfway decent. Have you been to Sunday school in a while? Not talking about your own fine teaching. I mean somebody else's class. Have you been? I'm telling you, there's a reason why some of these classes are not growing. I was in a class one time, the teacher was teaching from John 17, from the King James Version, where the text refers to Judas as son of perdition. The teacher looked at the text, read the text, looked at the class. Come to think of it, I was the only one there that day. Right? He read the text, Judas, son of perdition. He looked at the class and he said, now, predestination. Boy, that's a tough topic. Who really understands predestination? I'm looking at that text and I'm thinking, I don't believe that word is predestination. I believe that word is perdition. Does anybody know? Help me out here, okay? You ready? Anybody know what predestination and perdition have in common? Think, what do they have in common? P, that's right. That's all they have in common. All right, and this guy, I thought later, I thought if this guy had read one commentary, one quarterly, one teacher's book, one student book, one note from a study Bible somewhere, he probably would have worked that out. He was probably looking at that text for the very first time that morning. I had a state Sunday school guy tell me about a class he went to one time. And the teacher came in the class and he said, listen, I didn't get a chance to get to my lesson this week, so let me just pass out these quarterlies this morning. Let me ask you, if you will, would you read page 25 on that quarterly? Would you read page 26? Would you read page 27? When we get over here to page 30, we'll take prayer requests, we'll close in prayer, and we'll be done. And your pastor might be too sweet and too kind and too gentle and too gracious to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you the truth. If you can't figure out a way to teach any better than that, quit and quit tonight. We have got to have halfway decent teaching. It is a sin to take the greatest news ever to hit planet Earth and present it in such a way that people think this is not that significant, it's not that important, and it's not worth us giving our best to. We have got to have at least halfway decent. You don't have to be Chuck Swindoll to get this stuff done, but it's got to be at least halfway decent each and every week. Nothing less will do. Now, a little problem arises at this point. The Bible puts it this way, that it says, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought. Because we all have a tendency to evaluate ourselves more highly than is really merited. For example, did you know that 90% of pastors rate themselves as above average? Now think through that for a minute, all right? 90% of them think they're above average. Are 90% of them above average? No. By definition, only 50% of them are above average. They did a survey of teenagers and asked them, do you describe yourself as being able to get along with other people better, worse, about the same as? Where would you put yourself? Guess what percentage of teenagers describe themselves as worse than average? None. Zero. Every one of them put themselves in the top half. And we all have that kind of self-serving bias, and that's why the Bible says to us, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought. And the surveys that have been done on the subject are really pretty startling. Bruce Wilkinson says he has surveyed people who attend Sunday school and discovered that 80% of them describe Sunday school as boring. 80%. That's kind of scary. Truthfully, I think he's a little bit negative. So help you out with this. Let me ask you to turn to the person to your left. All right, don't say anything or anything, just picture them in your mind. Now turn to the person to your right, take a look at them, and I want you to think about this. Now think about those two people and think about this. One of them is boring. And because the Bible tells us, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, I want to kind of give you a little gift here, okay? I want to help you out with this, all right? And so this is what I want you to do. I want you once again to turn to the person next to you, and say these words, all right? Real loud. There's an outside chance, say them. You just might be boring. Say it to them, all right? Help them out, help them with this self-serving bias. Now, as we've been going through this, I'm going to guess that some of you just wish we would get on to the next topic because you're kicking back and you're saying, you know what? I don't know about these other people, but I guarantee you I am better than halfway decent. Get on to the next topic. Can I take the gloves off, friend? You worry me. The person who sits back and hears this kind of information and says, as the disciples did, is it I, Lord? I've got good news for you. I'm not too worried about you. The person who's not so sure, I'm above the bar of halfway decent, because what's going to happen is you're going to keep coming to these kind of events, and you're going to read the books, and you're going to listen to the tapes on how to be a better communicator, and you're going to watch the videos, and you're going to spend time studying because you're going to make sure that you want to be above that bar. Common, prevalent problem, and we need to take it seriously and make sure that we are above the bar of halfway decent.